Welcome back. If you're just joining, this is Daybreak on Trust Television, and of course this is the discussion segment of the program where we will be talking about the local government autonomy and its implementation. So, the ongoing struggle for local government autonomy in Nigeria, despite the Supreme Court's landmark judgment affirming the local government autonomy, governors are reportedly moving to undermine its implementation. The Supreme Court's ruling was hailed as a significant victory for local government autonomy and a major blow to the governor's grip on power. However, it seems that the battle is far from over, with governors pushing back against the judgment. The future of the grassroots governance in Nigeria seems to be hanging in the balance. Now, joining me today to provide more context and, of course, perspectives on this development, I have with me in the studio Professor Maxwell Gidado. He is the Pro-Chancellor of the Adamawa State University and former Dean of the Law Faculty at the Nasarawa State University. And also joining me in the studio is Chibuzo Okere, who is a public affairs commentator. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Good morning. Thank you very much.
Yes, Prof, perhaps I start with you.
Okay.
Prof, having been in the corridors of government, at the state level, what are some of the impediments that you think would be militating against local government autonomy in Nigeria? And do you think that this is a fallacy that state governors do not want, it to see the light of day?
That's a very good question. Now, from my experience of governance at the state level, and in particular the relationship between the states and the local governments, I can say authoritatively that the state governors or the state government will not be very comfortable, with this Supreme Court judgment. In a sense that, ab initio, they were given the powers to take care of laws that will run and take care of local governments. Because having looked at the federation, the setup, the federal system of government we're operating, which is a government being shared between the federal and the states, the local governments are like appendages of the states. And the constitution, you see, where the whole problem lies is they got these powers from the constitution. Section 7, subsection 2, gave the local government, the states, the powers by stating that after recognizing local governments with a proviso that this constitution only recognizes democratically, quote unquote, democratically elected local government councils. But it went further to say, despite this recognition, the states are mandated to make laws as far as functions, powers, and revenues of local governments are concerned. And that now led them to be enacting laws at their own state national assembly levels for the governance of local governments. And it also went further to strengthen this very power in section 162.5 by saying funds coming to local governments should be channeled towards state joint accounts. 162.5. Now, they went further in 162.6 to state that these funds, in addition to what comes as internally generated revenue from the states, should now be shared to the local governments through that very joint account. Now, the question now arises, when we know that the Constitution is the ground norm, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and it is stated there in section 1, subsection 2 of the Constitution, that this Constitution is supreme. Any other law that gets contrary to any of the provisions of this Constitution is null and void to the extent of its inconsistency. So now you can see the dilemma the state governments are in. To my mind, this Supreme Court judgment will be a judgment that will not go down well with the state government, because it is meant to usurp the powers that has been given to them. If the procedure, my problem is the procedure. If the Constitution were to be amended, you remove all these powers, and now maybe give it to the local governments. Let it be stated there in the Constitution. The way and manner the federal and state powers are located in the legislative list. Give a legislative list for the local governments too. Create offices, ways and means of how offices of local government chairman can be created, councillors, their tenure, everything spelled out. The same way is done with the president and the governor. Then that is where the full autonomy, as far as I'm concerned, that the local governments will have.
Chibuzo, do you think that the problem is more of a constitutional problem more than it is about a power play, as Prof has said? Prof has really talked about the constitutional provisions and how it has in one way or the other impeded, the ability of the governors to carry out their functions. But is it more about the constitution or rather the individuals?
Okay, let me first say that I'm privileged to be sharing the platform with my professor, who is my mentor, and a constitutional law teacher as well. Okay. And you can see why I
see the skepticism to go contrary to what you have said.
It's not even about skepticism, but he is absolutely on point. You see, whatever power play you talk about came from somewhere, and it came from the inconsistencies and the discrepancies that has been embedded in the Constitution. And as Prof highlighted, you cannot give birth to a child and throw that child away for another person to take care of the child. And that is exactly what Section 7 of the Constitution did by guaranteeing democratically elected council officials, but not being present to moderate how that democratic process will work. And what is even worse is that, under Section 8.3, it is both the state assembly and the state government that has powers to create the local government. And it becomes even a problem whereby they are not in charge of population. And the prescriptions there require that you have to get the population of the people, because a simple majority of them will be required for approval for establishment, of a new local government. And if you go further, I think in Section 7.4, the state government is the one empowered to ensure that the people who voted for state assembly elections are able to vote for local government elections. Then you begin to wonder, why is it that the Constitution did not vest these powers in institutions rather than government? The government is a political structure. Institutions are professional and technical to deliver. And that is the crisis you're having today in Rivers State over who should release voters' register. Because on one hand, the Electoral Act empowers the INEC at national level to do voter registration. And then on the other hand, the State Independent Electoral Commission are the ones to organize local government elections. So you see powers being vested at the state level. So I call it a drafting mischief, that has been done to make sure that the local government will not function effectively. So, as Prof highlighted, Section 162 itself, and I see something there also that the National Assembly need to look at, because even the Section 162, 5 and 6, provided that these allocations shall be done in the manner that will be prescribed by the National Assembly. Unfortunately, the National Assembly did not take further steps to make additional laws to clarify what the provision of the Constitution, had stated. So it's not even about power play, it's about confusion, about statecraft. How should our country governance structure be designed? Should we have 2 tiers? Should we have 3? That is what is the debate is about. The Constitution has created a confusion where it looks like 3 and 2. And that is the problem. So what we need to resolve now is, do we want 3 tiers of government, like Prof said, so that powers, and functions and the structure can be ascribed. The local government today had no list of legislative powers. We have only 2 lists, the exclusive and concurrent. So the residual list we talk about is imaginary if it does not exist among the 2. So we have to resolve that and say, we want 3 levels of government, or we want 2. If we want 2, because the Constitution in Section 8.3 seems to plan that we should have 2. But because we have fiscal issue, the revenue sharing issue that monies have to come from the state and local to the federal before we now do revenue allocation and distribute these finances, then there is a mix of those 2 or 3. So when we resolve this, and many people have argued that in many federal states, in the US and other countries, India and co, you can have 2 or 3. If you have 2, it means the state will be responsible for the number of local governments they will, create. And we won't have the issue we had during the Obasanjo era with Lagos State.
Prof, bearing in mind that this victory has come and there seems to be a mountain of constitutional, do I call it impediments now at this point, that might be militating against, the local government really getting this autonomy, like they say, because the Constitution seems to have guaranteed the powers of the governors more than the independence of the local government. So do you think it was sort of a superlative victory, if I would use that word, when the AGF, announced, and the federal government, and it was all in the media, that the local government autonomy has finally come following the Supreme Court pronouncement? What amount of work needs to be done in order to achieve that victory?
Yes, just as I said in my opening remarks, what needs to be done to cement the Supreme Court judgment and to finally give it a teeth is for this effort to be followed with a constitutional review, pure constitutional review. In other words, the onus is on the 10th Assembly now for them to, in the exercise of amending the Constitution, to now follow up with what the intent of the Supreme Court judgment. And once that is done, it will now put paid and put to rest all controversies that the implementation of what the Supreme Court judgment portends will arise. Because in the very first day I had this judgment, what just came to my mind was this: can this just be a judgment on paper that will find it very difficult to be implemented on ground? Because whereas the state governors will be relying on the constitutional provision, now the federal government will be looking at the Supreme Court judgment and call the governors to order if they don't comply. Or they are the ones that will direct the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation to wire this money straight into the accounts of the local governments, and no longer through the accounts of, through this joint state accounts. Now, and I know what would arise thereafter could be, we didn't hear the efforts of the governors, before the governors to challenge the fact that they were given this mandate by the Constitution, and the Constitution stands unamended. So then there's a conflict. Is it that they should abide by the provisions of the Constitution, or the judgment of the Supreme Court, which supersedes the provision of the Constitution? So you can see the confusion in between. So to my mind, in order to put this matter to rest, is one and the same government. The tinubu-led administration wants to give autonomy to the local governments. And what do they need to do? The first thing would have been to go through this constitutional amendment process. They can do all the lobbying, or whatever it is. After all, APC controlled states are the majority. Maybe all they need to do is step aside to the other states that are non-APC, lobby them, and get that 24%. That's the 24 number of the states, 2/3 of the states of the Federation, that is needed for a bill to to pass through. Then it comes to the president, and president assents. That would be the end of it. You can see the autonomy will just move smoothly. But this judgment came as a big surprise, and it's like usurped the powers of the National Assembly. So I know definitely they are up and doing, because it's one of their points, one of the items on their agenda as far as constitutional amendment is concerned, because I'm privy to having gone through when the memoranda, when they sent out the memorandum calling for people to or adverts calling for people to send in their memoranda. I knew local government autonomy was, one of the issues on the burner. So I'm very positive that they have to take it up. Otherwise, there may be some resistance by the state governors. And furthermore, even if they don't resist on paper, on ground, as it is presently, you agree with the popular saying, he who pays the piper dictates the tone. And most of these local government chairmen were put there by the governors. Some of them are boys and stooges, of the governors. So there's no way a local government chairman that was brought in through the grace of a governor would sit and challenge, the governor by whatever means. And he tells the governor, for instance, that from now hence, with this Supreme Court judgment, I will no longer go for JAC meeting. I won't go for a joint account meeting with the Commissioner of Local Governments. And I won't take all the instructions, because some of them are even being boxed. There are state laws which exist at the states. For instance, when monies come in, those that have state universities in some states, some percentage is being sent to the state universities for the running of the state universities in the interest of the entire local governments in that state. So with a local government chairman and say he's no longer remitting that 5%, to the local government. No. Secondly, there's an amount they've also agreed at the JAC that will be channeled towards education, primary education, health, etc., etc. So it's what remains that usually some governors don't even think about it. They now send you the balance for you to, but they monitor, how you expend that money. But here you are today, these monies are coming straight to local governments, the accounts of local governments of this year. So if this happens, and we will watch and see how, responsible or irresponsible some of these local government chairmen will be to now say, I will no longer remit this percentage, because it's already a law and the laws have not been amended. Supreme Court judgment does not, what the Supreme Court does is send the money direct. Okay, the money has gone into your account directly, but these are what you've already agreed upon.
I understand that some of them have already started to exhibit an I have arrived mentality even before the implementation. But Chibuzo, let's say all other things being equal, the constitutional review is done and all of the arrangements and the necessary amendments required to ensure the implementation of the local government autonomy happens. How do we divorce constitutional provisions from what Prof has just mentioned, which is political arrangement?
Well, I think that the laws exist for state actors, to function. So even at the state levels where they have made these laws, and the unfortunate thing is most local government chairmen have never seen the state law for their local government. We went to a number of local government to train the councillors on how to make laws and do oversight and a number of functions they perform. We even discovered what was shocking, that the state secretary is also the clerk for the for the councillors, and most times they can't have access to their chamber except the secretary is around to open the chamber. So what is happening at the local government level is very shocking. Recently, the House of Rep had a town hall, a national discourse on local government governance. And one of the reports that came out was that a particular local government somewhere in the north have been taken over by farmers. That people simply sit somewhere and appropriate what comes to the local government. So it's a very big challenge. And that is why I think, that we need a national local government governance law that sets a template for how the local government system will operate. And the reason is simple, because if you prior to 2003, if you watch the local government system between 1999 and 2003, you could see that the chairman even took the governors to court, the councillor, but immediately after that, the governors found a way to now start the issue of making laws to do 2-year tenure, 3-year tenure, and some of them decided that, we are not going to do elections anymore. It's going to be caretaker committee. And that was what led to this issue of Supreme Court position that no, Section 7 says this must be democratically elected people. And for you to enjoy what is provided in Section 162, sub 5 and 6, you need to comply with the first leg of Section 7. So I think also that if we have the laws, national and organized, and the National Assembly make sure that there is either give power for subsidiary legislation, or regulatory provision that provide for how, because the law says these distributions will be done in the way and manner prescribed by the National Assembly. That prescription is missing. The RAFAC law is not enough prescription. The revenue sharing formula is not enough prescription. We need that prescriptive law that says this is how these funds will be governed, because that vacuum exists. The state now comes in and say, oh, what is coming to Jack? 5% should go to university, this percent should go to, in fact, in some of the states, like in FCT, 10% of the internal generated revenue are to be sent to the local government. And the minister recently affirmed that previous ministers did not obey that law and carry out those remittances, that he was going to do it, but since they are not able to pay primary school teachers, he may use that their own fund to pay the primary schools. That tells you the gap we have in the law system. So if we leave every state to make any type of local government law they have, disobey the so-called state joint account system, because local government revenue go to another joint account system they have, from which they are supposed to use state assembly law to also remit. And according to the constitution, they are supposed to have economic development planning boards established for them by the local government. In most of the state laws, the state assembly are the ones who ratify suspension of chairmen and what have you. So you see, they exist, but they don't exist. And that is because Section 7 has claimed that after we recognize democratically elected local government, you should make law for its establishment. That is very problematic. And I think that needs to, change. So at the state level, if we want to develop, we need to tackle poverty and underdevelopment at the local government level. To achieve that, we need a national local government administration or governance law. Everybody will now take that template and domesticate at their state level.
Prof, do you agree with this template, especially bearing in mind, like you mentioned earlier, that some of these local government chairmen, in one way or the other, for lack of a better words, are just stooges of these governors? Doesn't that show in some way that perhaps the local government and the structures that are in place currently might not be robust enough or ready for this autonomy that we're so talking about right now?
Yes, I will tell you that for free, that the caliber of some local government chairmen in some states leaves much to be desired.
Questionable.
Exactly. Because, you see, it is their belief that if they see someone too smart, well educated, who, let me even, drive the point home. A professor, they make the office so attractive now, with the autonomy being granted. You see somebody that will be, that was teaching in a university and having now heard of the new development, he comes and wants to vie for the office. I bet you they won't allow him scale through even nomination. Okay, because just as I said, aside from the influence of the governor, yes, the governor at the state level, the residents of the local government themselves, they'll be scared, of this very clever, intelligent, a well-educated person.
So there's this thing that nobody likes smarters.
Exactly. So if you see some of the character, and that was why you will see someone will even go and be forging certificates. Where they will be faking certificates that they don't even have for the mere purpose of wanting to get into that office. So they need to sanitize, and this can only come through the law, through the provisions of the law. Also stating the same way and manner qualifications. Who are the characters, who are the type of people that are eligible to contest for these offices. You must be at least educated up to this level. You must have this experience. You must belong to not less than so age. So when these things are sanitized, then they also have a democratically well-laid procedure, electoral system that will make this election of both the chairman and the councillors transparent. Now that is where you may see some sanity coming into it. But you see, some of them start coming in as chairman and councillors through the caretaker process. You know, governors will come in. The whole thing even stems from the fact that the constitution is silent about their tenure. So having given these powers to the state houses of assemblies, you see variance. Some states give them even 1 year. There was even a state that legislated that the tenure of a local government chairman and councillor should be 1 year. Some 2 years, some 3. So you can see the divergence. If there was a law, and perhaps if the constitution is amended, and it's stated too that tenure of local government chairman should be 3 years, uniform all through, and it should also be stated qualifications, those who can contest and those who cannot contest. It will be all carried all around it, all throughout the 36 states of the federation, but there's none. So you see all this mismatch. Yes, confusion. So, and now when they now want to conduct elections, you definitely know that APC control states, all the APC,
they sweep everything.
They will sweep everything.
Ditto for PDP,
ditto order for other parties.
I think it's always
all over.
Season.
Precisely. So this has been the bane as far as local government advancement or local government development is concerned. Because you see, from that stem of people, from this type of people that come on board, you won't go there and see anything on ground. It's a bazaar. Once the money comes in, they will share and disappear.
Indeed.
Exactly, and wait for the next alert.
All right, Prof. Prof has described it as a bazaar, but then, Chibuke, perhaps just 1 minute concluding statement on all of this, Chibuzo rather. Just 1 minute concluding statement.
Well, what I have to say is, at the local government level, we're already seeing a shift with the traditional institutions. We have bright and educated people, who are very exposed and leaving their high horses and coming down to serve the people. And I think the local government political structure should borrow this particular template and attract qualified, like Prof mentioned, and expose and competent people to drive. Because if the local government develop, the state will develop, and the nation will develop at large. So this is what we must do. We shouldn't play politics with development of local government. The people there are so impoverished and disempowered, and that is where governance should start.
Thank you so much, Chibuzo Okere, public policy expert, and also Professor Maxwell Gidado, a Pro-Chancellor at the Adamawa State University and former Dean of the Law Faculty at the Nasarawa State University. Thank you so much, sir. And of course, you were a former member of the Adamawa State Executive Council. You served as Chief of Staff. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being a part of this conversation. And of course, to viewers, it's now time to go on a break. And when we return, it will be time to serve you the front pages of national dailies here in Nigeria. Join us again.